I've never read any of the graphic novels these films were based off of, so if that's going to impair your enjoyment of my analysis, I guess. During Grant's presidency, Jonah Hex is a remorseless bounty hunter. In the Civil War, he was a rebel whose honor put him afoul of a Confederate general, Quentin Turnbull, who murdered Jonah's family while Jonah watched. As a result of the ordeal, Jonah's face is disfigured and he can talk with the dead. After staging his own death, Turnbull, with a group of rebel stalwarts, hatches a plan to bring the Union to its knees. Grant wants Hex to stop it. While the nation readies to celebrate Independence Day, Hex and an unlikely ally have little time to stop Turnbull and his weapon of mass destruction. So, what we got here is a western based off of a comic book that's actually a Bond movie, and it ain't that good. Graphic novel adaptations, for the most part, have an infamous reputation of being hopelessly lost in translation, and Jonah Hex sure as hell is no different. Various elements that only probably worked in the graphic novel are mere weeds growing out of the corners of the dull concrete slab that is this film's story. A generic narrative of super agents, super gadgets and super villains that neither subvert or build upon these tropes and only remind you of films that have told this story better. Josh Brolin was unintelligible half of the time, but considering he's playing a character with a hole in his face, I can't really complain, man. Megan Fox, yes, now I can complain. Utter crap. No reason for her to be here. John Malkovich is actually the best thing in this. He plays a psycho Confederate general well and made any scene he was in just that bit more tolerable. The cinematography of this film is incredibly dark. Large chunks of this film I could only make vague shapes of. Not good at all. The scenes I could actually fucking see didn't fare so well either. Shot without style, CGI that of course has dated poorly, and apart from the absurdity of the Doomsday Weapon, there were no memorable images of this film for me. Dialogue was also forgettable and character development was at a bare minimum. Overall, Jonah Hex was a film that had no idea what it wanted to be, a clusterfuck of conflicting aesthetics and limp storytelling, one of the most unremarkable comic book films that I have ever seen. A spaceship arrives in Arizona 1873 to take over the Earth, starting with the Wild West region. A posse of cowboys and natives are all that stand in their way. That's it. With a logline that you'd think would be describing an asylum production, I was expecting very dumb, very underwhelming things from Cowboys and Aliens. However, to my surprise, I found a film that was paced well with plenty of suspense and action. The story was intriguing and the characters, whilst stereotypes of the Western genre, were utilised well as the film keeps up the Western pastiche convincingly until the reveal of the aliens. I found it to be a great first act which chose the quieter half of this genre hybrid to establish time, place and characters. It was really well done. The CGI still holds up and the action sequences were well directed. Jon Favreau, Hollywood veteran and director of the first Iron Man, chose to invest in his characters rather than set pieces, and I believe that paid off. Daniel Craig's accent aside, all the actors appear to be comfortable in their roles, and since their interactions make up most of this film's running time, that was important. Cowboys and Aliens is an entertaining, if only slightly vacuous feeling, pre-extended universe blockbuster. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, discovers vampires are planning to take over the United States. He makes it his mission to eliminate them. It's a bit more complicated than that really, but who gives a fuck. Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is a shoehorny piece of revisionist history that works well as a mildly spicy historical epic and also a very 2000s underworld-esque horror action piece. The performances are okay, if a little overdramatic at times, and the film looks and feels authentic at being a historical epic through detailed art direction and the cinematography's warm colour palette. The CGI is okay if overused and reaching the point of absurdity on several occasions. I know that this was par the course for fantasy action films about not so 7 years ago, but it's still retarded, and I stand by my point. The best this film becomes is in its attempts to fuse historical fact with vampire lore. All of that about the American slave trade being entirely run by a network of vampires I found intriguing as a broad metaphor. I wish the film had more of that instead of Snyder-esque over-dramatization, and again I spout retarded CGI. In all, Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter can work for you as either a po-faced black comedy or a time capsule for the era of high-concept blockbusters now so long behind us. Right, in conclusion, Jonah Hex is a bad Bond film masked as a generic western proclaiming to be an adaptation of a beloved niche comic book series. Cowboys and Aliens is an overlooked high-concept blockbuster that executes its relatively unique concept with considerable accomplishment, and Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter is the second Underworld prequel no one asked for that features surprisingly consistent storytelling. Goodbye.